Hello paper florists, this is Christina with Fleur-ish Paper Flower Design, and today I'm going to do a quick deconstruction of the October challenge flower, which is the Alstroemeria, aka Peruvian lily. Let's dive in. Most of these stems either have 3 to 5 blooms per stem. This one's got 3. This one, which is all buds here, has 5. You can count them. There's 5 little buds hanging out here. And they all kind of come out from a central point at the stem. Move this leaf out the way here. So they all come out from the same point at the stem, regardless of how many there are on the stem. And they all grow to about the same height as well. So these are a little bent as they're growing, but they're all about the same length of stem from the base of the flower to where they all meet together at the main stem. Another interesting part here that I've noticed is the way that the leaves are formed. Coming out of the stem, you'll see that they actually come out upside down and twist as they grow out, so that way they're right side up. It's just an interesting little detail there if you want to try to incorporate that into your paper version of this flower. So I'm gonna pull off one of these buds here so we can get a closer look at that. So the buds here are really, I can get it into focus here, are really just the 3 larger petals of the flower that kind of encircle the rest. They're all kind of curled in on each other here. So they will begin to open up, and these are partially bloomed. They're not fully opened yet. So, and these are the white Alstroemeria. So these will probably be the easiest for you to color if you're going to take this project on. Really just have a little bit of green, some pink, and some yellow as far as your colors go for that. So actually gonna set this aside really quick as well and show you one that has fully bloomed. So this is from a different stem, so you can see the yellow is a little bit brighter on this one than the other grouping over here. You'll also notice that there is a slight difference in the centers. So this one kind of has the smaller little rough kind of stamen pieces here, whereas this one kind of has the longer, like lily type stamens that kind of jut out every which way. So you can do either way, both are correct. I've actually seen some of the Alstromerias that have both types of stamen within the same flower. So if you want to mix it up, you can. If you don't, that's okay too. Just whatever you find is easier or more interesting to make. So yeah, there's just 2 different types of centers there. So getting into taking the flower apart, or actually before getting to that point, I do want to point out just another little detail here that I find interesting about the stem. There is no calyx or sepal pieces around the base of the flower. It really just kind of comes straight out of the stem. There is this kind of like bulbous bit here that kind of juts out. But the really interesting part is the way that it's kind of pointed. It almost makes a star shape with how the stem kind of grows into these petals. So the rib of the petal is what kind of makes that shape there. So just fascinating little details there. If you're doing a full study of this flower as you're making it, you might want to include those. But a lot of these little details are probably not something that a client will really notice or even care about. So it's really up to you. All right, so we're gonna get into pulling this little guy apart. So the first ones that I'm gonna take off here are these larger petals. And like I said, on the bud, it's these 3 petals that encase the center and these little skinny petals here. So when it's closed up, it's like that. So just gonna pull these 3 off. They actually do just kind of snap off of the base here. So when the flower is fully bloomed, you'll see that these petals kind of curve outwards. So they are pretty deeply cupped. And the rounded side is facing out. So it's attached like that. So if you look at the back of this petal, you can see that the green is still fairly prominent towards the tip of the petal. And you also see a little hint of pink here. The shape of the petal is almost similar to that of a dogwood, at least at the top, where you have that little divot and it's darker right there at that little point. So something to keep in mind as you're building this out. Just to give you a rough estimate of size for these petals, they are just over 2 inches tall and maybe about 1 3/8 inches wide. So it is a very severe curve out for the shape, like a little balloon. And if you look here at the tip of the petal, you can see that it kind of curls in on itself as it grows out from the base. So move this guy over here. So that's these 3. And then I'm gonna do this bottom center petal here. So it is the first of the 3 smaller petals. And if you can see this, it does kind of mirror the 2 brighter ones. So it does have a little faint hint of yellow and like just very, very light lines on it, just to kind of pick up that detail from the top. This one is a relatively flat petal. There's not a whole lot of cupping per se with it. So it really is just kind of curled. So you can kind of see that. It does not curl in on itself like the 3 larger petals. So it is very flat at the base. And then for the size on this one, it is from the very tip, it's about 2 1/4 inches tall and maybe about 3/4 inches wide. So with this one, it's a little easier to show the detail. Get right in the black there so you can see it. So there's this very fine tip right at the very end of the petal here. So this little guy right here. So when you're cutting out your shapes, you want to make sure you keep that point as close as you can, just so you have that detail. If you want to get into the really nitty-gritty detail, it's got a little sawtooth edge on it. It's very, very faint and very subtle. Again, if you don't think anybody's going to notice that detail, you don't have to put it in there, but if you decide to, you can definitely do so. I would just use very fine detail scissors or maybe embroidery scissors to cut that fine little detail. So that's that one. And that sawtooth edge is actually on all of the petals. Okay, so we're gonna get to these two here. So before I do that, I'm gonna try to get a little closer into the camera so you can see it before I pull these off. So if you look down towards the base of these petals, you can see that they are curled in on each other so severely that they actually make like a little tunnel as they meet the stem. So when you're making these, you might want to make sure that you roll your petals to get that detail. I'm going to pop these off. And then show that end again. See if I can get it into focus. There we go. Okay. So you can kind of see how it is curled in on itself, like almost glued together, really, with as tight as that is curled in on itself. So this one does have a much more vibrant yellow on these petals. And then you also see the darker kind of reddish brown striping on them as well. They also have the little pointed tip at the very end of the petal and the same little sawtoothed edge just kind of around the top of the petal. So for sizing on these, it's going to be fairly similar to the bottom petal. So this one is again about 2 1/4, almost 2.5 inches tall. And then again about 3/4 inch wide. And this one also has like a little hint of pink kind of right along the rib of the petal, and also has some of the green on the back too. All right, so then the last little bit here is the stamen. So like I said before, this one is a little different. Try to get it in focus here. This one is a little different. So these are the kind of small, little rough little stamen pieces, and they are all curled. So when they're on the flower, they were curled up like that. So you want to make sure you kind of curl that wire or bend it just so you'll get that detail. So there are 7 stamens here. They are kind of all stacked together. It's not really a round type of center with the way that it grows out. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're putting it together. So I'm actually going to cut these off from the base. So like I said, there are 7. On this one, only 6 of them actually have pollen on them. So the 7th one, the one that's kind of the middle piece, doesn't really have anything on it. It's just a plain little stick there, just like that. So if you can see, maybe a little easier on my hand here. So you can see that they are almost a translucent white. You can get away with doing a white covered wire, like a white cloth or paper covered wire, or if you don't have any of that, you could take a wire and just wrap it with white crepe or white floral tape, and that would work just fine.
There is a little hint of green in the coloration on those as well.
So if you want to add that detail in, you can. So before I completely pull these apart, they're actually all attached in a row here. So it's not like they're all attached in a line. You can even see that. Like they're not, it's not a circular set of stamen, it's just like here's a line and here's another line and that's it. So that is it for the bloom. I do want to talk about the leaves just a little bit more. So with the leaves, they do grow quite large, and they do grow all down the stem. This is a better example. So they do grow all down the stem. I had to pull a couple of them off because they were beat up, but they do grow from, I would say, midway up from the larger cut stem to the very top where the blooms come out, is where they start and where they end. And again, I just kind of want to highlight that twisted detail there. I just find that really cool. So the leaves vary in size and shape. So the closer you get to the flowers, obviously the smaller the leaves will be. And then as you go down the stem, the larger they will get. They are all very long and skinny. So like this one is very, very long, but it is a good example to show the veining. So it is almost completely vertical from the base of the leaf to the tip. So veins don't go out like at an angle, they just go straight and they follow the curve of the leaf. So if you're doing the veining with like a scoring tool or a bone folder, it's important to pay attention to that. If you're cutting it from crepe, you'll want to have the grain lines kind of follow the veins. So you don't want to cut your crepe at like that mitered like V that we're normally used to seeing. So just something to keep in mind with those. So to give you a range of size of these leaves, so this is like the teeny tiniest one that I could find, super close to the flower. So this one is about, again, 2 1/4, very similar to the length of the petals. And then this behemoth of a leaf is about, let's see, about 6 7/8 inches long from base to tip. So they do get very, very big. So just keep that in mind as you're building out this flower. I'm looking forward to Susan's tutorial to see how she tackles the lines on these. I'm not exactly sure how I would go about that yet. Maybe acrylic paint with a very fine tipped brush. Maybe a marker, I'm not sure. So we'll see what Susan has cooked up for that. And if you have any questions about the flower, about how it goes together, just leave a comment and I will do my best to answer. Have a great day, guys. Bye.